new mineshaft has been found by an M Cave hiker. Does it hold any mysteries, and is it possible it could link to Kenny Veach's final place before vanishing? Welcome. When it comes to Kenny Veach and the search and rescue for him, the 22nd of November 2014, it was reported in an official news article that his phone was found near a vertical mineshaft. But the problem with that is it didn't specify which one. To say a mineshaft could imply one of many, and considering the Nevada desert has thousands upon thousands, how many does Little Jomay Canyon have? And that's where SB Vega's Adventures came on in, who was recently looking for another mine shaft which was vertical. Previously, on another hike, he came across a prospect mine in hopes that there was more to it originally, which wasn't far from the mine shaft where Kenny Veach stood near, and where most people originally thought is where his scent ended at.
He could be down there. He could even be in that prospect pit up there on the side of the hill, which we're about to find out. All right, coming down from the mine, we are heading down this hill. You can see the agave burn pit down there. There's a primitive campsite down there. We're not gonna be checking either one of them. We're going straight this way, up the hill, doing some climbing, and right here, it looks like it is a prospect pit. It looks like it from what I can see. Previously unmapped and unknown prospect pit. But it's something. It's something. Somebody started digging here. This may very well be a collapsed mine or a dynamite mine. This could be the final resting place of Kenny Veach. He could have went in there and somehow blew up the entrance, sealing himself in there at his own tomb. So, is this what happened to Kenny Veach? A mine that nobody knew about?
However, in recent time, with a new mineshaft being found, it poses the questions of, could Kenny have covered half the distance and dropped the items off at an earlier mineshaft to double back on himself? Time efficiency, because he didn't plan on staying out there, which could also imply he may have gone elsewhere, staging his disappearance. But before we go too far with that, let me play to you some of the footage in which SB first encountered this new mysterious mineshaft.
We are almost to the tailings pile. That could be the prospect pit. It's right up here somewhere. And if that's not it, we'll come along north a little bit. And I suspect that second mine prospect pit is somewhere in this area. That's what I suspect. So that's what we're gonna try. I don't think this is an agave burn pit. Those usually have white tailings piles. This one here looks like it could be a mine. It could be the mine we've been looking for, the second mine that's out here. As soon as we climb this hill, we'll know if that's it. Something's been dug here. I'll tell you what, there's a hole here. Is this it? I think it is. We finally found the second mine of Jomay Valley, right here. Oh heck yes.
Now, after seeing that footage, with credit to SB Vega's Adventures for heading out there, I will be giving my analysis, as in screenshots from the footage beyond, when up close with the mineshaft, looking at it from different angles, what's inside, the bottom of it, and what do I really think about it overall, whether Kenny Veach was in there, buried underneath, or if he just simply stood near to the location. One thing you could put an argument across is, if it was a beacon marker, why didn't Kenny do it at that mineshaft instead of the one what we see in his video? Is it just because the other one's more prominent, because it stands up more, it's got more structuring to it, whereas this particular one, not so much, but it does appear somewhat collapsed or a little bit broken how things have fallen inwards, and we'll take a closer look at that in just a second. But before we go any further, I just want to announce a few important things. Number one being, if you're interested in the location, the true location of where it is on the maps, how likely it is for it to link to Kenny, his hike, his final hike, his scent, and all of that, I will be doing a separate detailed map analysis in a day or two. So be on the lookout for that, where we go deeper and reinforce more with the theories of Kenny being linked and associated to this kind of hidden mineshaft in a way. But right now, I want to be analysing the photos up close so you can see from my point of view. The second important thing I would like to say is welcome. If you are currently here during the live premiere, and for those watching on catch-up, welcome to this video. Be sure to check out my previous videos on the case. If you've missed out on any previous ones, you need to do some older research to do with mines, mine shafts, prospects, pits, etc. You'll find that top right corner up there where the I symbol is. Click on that drop down menu box with the full Kenny Veach playlist, some loose videos attached, and be sure at any point when watching today or tonight, be sure to drop a comment down below and let me know what you think about this new mineshaft and whether you think Kenny approached it at any point or time. And do you think that the mineshaft may hold more secrets? Does it indirectly or directly link to the mineshaft, which we've always known of? Any underground tunnel networks which run from one to the other? You let me know. And if you've got any questions, answers, thoughts, theories, it's all welcome. Leaving comments will help spreading awareness, keep the case alive, creates new ideas, discussions, and I can always respond back to the comments as soon as possible. And lastly, if you do want to support my channel in general, in the comment section, pinned message, there is a PayPal link and channel membership. With that all being said, let's get straight into these photos of the new mineshaft. Visually, it appears it's on raised ground, like a mound or a little bit of a hill. And then in the distance over that way, I believe is Jome Guzzler. And then over the mountains, which I believe is what Jeff Clark refers to as the flat top, over that way, you've got the likes of Robbins Canyon, where that big M cave is, where SB Vegas Adventures has hiked out just recently, in which his premiered video is coming later tonight, or depending on what time zone you're on, where the Robbins footage originally in 2021 captured the rock anomaly, all the strange things going on over there, and the dangers too, which SB has recently documented with more footage. Be on the lookout for that. It's good timing with the video right now, visually, but we're on the other side at this moment, up Jome Canyon, but facing west, somewhat west. And in the center of the screen is where the mineshaft is, a vertical one with a drop. Would it be considered deep enough? Well, comparing it to the one which Kenny recorded, there's a big difference. However, there is still a drop. You fall in, you may not be able to get back out. And the possibilities of, could it be deeper or was it in the past? Was that before or after Kenny's final hike out there? That's what we need to bring up. And whilst we're going through this with the screenshots provided, if any of you notice anything strange, be sure to drop a comment down below. Now, in the past, when I was on a different device, I think it might have been Android, there was a magnifying glass in which I could zoom into, but I can't do that anymore. It just doesn't seem to be available. So I'll just have to zoom in on the screen here and there, and hopefully it does all fit on. Very gravelly, the ground, bit of vegetation as well. Not exactly overly concealed, though, depending on the time, when things grow and when things die. A little bit grown right near the edge of the mineshaft opening. Bit of boulder rock just up there in place. Now something like that dislodged or broke off and fell into the shaft. If anyone was already in there, that would be problematic. However, doesn't seem to be the case. There wasn't much rockfall within, and we'll see that clearer later. But it looks like all these loose rocks which may have come from the inner rock wall of into that mine shaft. So you call it ground disturbance, man-made, with time making that hole in the ground, digging for stuff, resources, and being somewhat successful because they dug down deep enough. It's not a prospect pit, a shallow hole. It's a bit more deeper. And that's the interesting thing. We're coming across more deeper, somewhat explorable mine shafts compared to actual caves, which Kenny was all about. However, is there that possibility that could any of these mine shafts, secret or not, deeper down within, hold the entrance gateway to the M cave, somehow underground, or it leads underground somewhere to the actual cave? It does make you think. But with Kenny focusing in on the other mine shaft, was that as a means of misdirection? Because this was the actual mine shaft, he decided to put his phone coins nearby. And you know what's so interesting? For example like this, most of the articles say and refer to Kenny's phone being found. Even the original news, K3 News, it's hardly ever mentioned about the coins, but it was mentioned. Kenny put coins by the mine shaft or a mine shaft. Why would he do that? That's done with purpose, reaching deep down into your pockets and pulling out the coins. If it was just a phone, I can understand a theory concept aspect from SB Vega's Adventures that could suggest maybe Kenny put his phone beside the mine shaft or a mine shaft, forgot about it, and then walked away. It wasn't done on purpose. It was accidental, forgetful behaviour. And yeah, if it was just a phone, I would understand that. But for coins, loose coins, to be purposely placed beside the phone, it seems more like Kenny knew exactly what he was doing at the time. Now, speaking of this screenshot, when Steve pans the camera around, this is more so facing south the way he came up. Way down there would be Jomay Road, out of sight. So enough distance has been covered. 3 to 4 hours. Not up to this point though, because it's 3 to 4 hours to the Kenny mine shaft. But still, a lot of distance covered, and with SB covering it more on the right-hand side of the canyon going north, whereas most people are focused closer to the mountains over there and Jomay Guzla on the left, there is still areas of interest, such as here. Now, besides the vegetation, some bigger rocks there, which may have come from the mine shaft itself when being dug out and put to the side. I mean, when you look at Kenny's mine shaft, there's more planks of wood there compared to maybe the ratio of rocks. But then again, that's more spread out. Bit of a bigger mine shaft. Nevertheless, it could still hold mysteries, this one, if there are any potential tunnels, if there ever was. And you let me know, once again in the comments, when looking through these screenshots, if you see anything strange. Now, it's only screenshots, but you might notice something unusual or spooky. A creature, something unidentified, something in the sky, the mountains. We can all see different things. I mean, I could focus in and say, I wonder what that is, that little white thing in the middle. May not be anything that important, but it caught my eye. So, yeah. Now, moving along, what we've got here is from Google Earth imagery. And I'm not doing a full-on analysis, but it's just to put it out there, roughly speaking. When you see that mountain, that darker one, that one there is pretty much what you see here. Okay? Different colouring, but take in mind, taken at different times. One's satellite, one's on ground, footage, boots on ground, different times of the season and the visuals, the pixels, how they load. Just take that into consideration. And then down there, which goes around that bend and Jomay Road, is what you see way down that way. Okay? And as for Jomay Guzla, around that area there, is what you see that way. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense for now. And with that being in mind, it's closer to where Kenny would have parked back down that way as for Steve, compared to the Mineshaft which Kenny recorded in his original hike video. So less distance, less time to cover to get there and possibly place the phone at that spot instead. That's what the concept and the theory is. Over there, I believe, is the flat top, which Jeff always refers to. But closer on screen, we do have the vertical mineshaft located there. A fair size. I'd argue and say the opening is like wider in width and dimensions. Not so much the depth part, but the other features. It's a lot wider compared to the mineshaft of Kenny's. We'll call it KV or Kenny's mineshaft, and then this one's called the second mineshaft. I think that'll be easier to refer to. A lot of loose rocks, bits of stone and whatnot gathered, collected there. Some of it appears loose, others are just embedded in the ground, natural. A biggish boulder there with that on top, which could be some roots, bit of wood, bit of vegetation that's died. Zooming in just in case you notice anything of interest. As for the mountains, we've always got to look out for the mountains now, because the time when Scott Natal went out there some months ago in 2025, when panning the camera around, there was a strange looking dark figure on the mountains watching over. Looked creepy. Would we get a repeat of that with SB's footage? You never know. It's always worth checking it out, because it would be creepy if there was a hiker a second, or if it was Kenny, or at some point in the past, observing from afar on higher elevation and ground. You never know. So, most of it appears, normal. There's been activity here, more so in the past, not so much recent. But what I will say is, considering this video is being done, it's worth mentioning as a heads up, you never know what might happen to this area weeks, months later. Whether it's adjusted, changes are made, things are taken away, or items are added. Because when it came to Kenny's mineshaft, at some point there was a supply cache, planks of wood and rock piled on top of one another with food, I think a lighter, water, liquid, stuff like that, wedged underneath for any hikers that may need it as a means of helping others, which was a positive for a change. Will we see any changes here down the line? It makes you think. Interesting. Bigger, chunkier planks of wood here, but resembles the same type of aging and visuals as Kenny's mineshaft. So the people that may have dug this one out probably were responsible for Kenny's mineshaft too. There's a good chance of that. But the other one more deeper, more rich with resources compared to this one, supposedly. You see, maybe not so much from this angle, it's wedged into the ground back there. I do find it interesting then, how one mineshaft is a bit more closed off as for the entranceway where planks of wood go across. But this particular one is a lot more open and wider. And there's no fencing, no barbed wire, it's just left open. Not exactly, it's quite unsafe. Compared to some other caves or mines out there in the desert area, where it's close to here or a bit further on, like when Scott Natal went to one, when SB went to the same place years later, there was barbed wire fencing around saying keep out, danger, to protect people from not, to stop them from going in and getting hurt. But then a location like this, where it's out in the open, this is closer to the DNWR compared to Kenny's mineshaft, still out by miles, but closer, technically speaking, and yet it's just left open like that. Yeah, maybe they don't expect many hikers to come up here, because why would they? But when other areas may be sealed off, cornered, closed, fenced, barbed wired, there's a level of interest there. What about this one? Any rogue hikers, any people in the background may come by this down the line. Interesting. I think because most hikers have chosen the left-hand side over that way when hiking north, they wouldn't have come across this. But SB Vegas did mention that at Crichiga during his hike came up this way, heading north, you see on ground level, and approached this. Did he inspect it? I didn't see the video myself. Did he, spend time around it or not? You let me know in the comments section. The only reason why I say that is when it came to Aquachiga in the past, when walking by the supposed covered M cave, he just blanked it and walked by. Whilst yes, indirectly we got to see the background footage and it showed that there was a missing rock. When SB went there later, some point 2022 I think, more hands-on, up close, showing what it looked like at that time. And then I could compare it to the past. And he stood on top as well, looking down. So he saw the ground level of where the rock came from, which was originally on the side of the covered cave, which Sean Horlacker was nudging and said it was firmly in place. So likely a person was responsible for that, but never came forwards. So if Aquachiga walks by something of interest, did he do the same here? I'm not too sure. And I'm just showing you that level of uncertainty because I just wouldn't know. But beside that, it's good what SB has done. And with that being in mind, having a closer look at the mineshaft, for example, here, you can see the shape of the rocks on the side. There's some whiteness, which is important in fairness. It's very likely natural. But the reason why it's worth acknowledging, and some of that probably isn't white, it's probably more so the sunlight, how it catches on the side of the rock. But in some areas you might get white seams or white marks, and it can be the scars or the within the rock itself, natural. Similar to what Scott Natal's captured when looking at caves. I just can't remember the ore, the scars within it. Sean Horlacker came across it at that supposed covered cave and believed it was a white seam, like sealed, fused, done by military, maybe government, to cover up a cave of interest or the M cave. But the more you see it out and about, the less like it probably is. But, there's still always that possibility. And, the way it looks visually here, when looking at it from the different angles and further deeper down, not quite, but it reminds me of like a bird's nest, where planks of wood and debris may have collapsed in on itself at some point, as a possibility. Now, some of this wood may have came from the top area, whether it was like a proper structure, like the one what you see at Kenny's Mineshaft. It just links back to like the Heavy D investigation of Susan Powell, the search for her, and the belief that she was down a mineshaft, a much, much deeper one. Really deep, and there was like several birds' nest all the way down. There was a fire, the mineshaft collapsed on itself, went all the way down, planks of wood and debris. At each interval, each level, there was like a bird's nest of debris, and it had to be cleared out bit by bit. And this, a very small microcosm, reminds me of that. Now, the shaping of this mineshaft is quite interesting. It's nicely shaped as well. Not as deep, so not as dark, and wider to allow more light within. Is there any carvings, anything of interest on the side of these rocks, just to make sure nothing's been missed out on? I do think that these planks, wooden boards, look very similar to the ones at Kenny's Mineshaft. Same people, same resources, material used. That may be more so perched on the edge of the side of the rock there. It has crumbled at some point. As you see, it's gathered on top of the plank, so some of it would have fallen in. Seen better days, of course, but it has been there for a very long time. Probably dates back similar to Kenny's Mineshaft as well. Not seen too many nails. Maybe... No, I can't really see that. Really any nails. I can see like a hole in wood where nails may have gone at some point. But I don't see any like loose ones, which is interesting. And then anything, any symbols, messages, signs. And the reason why I say that is whether it be by Kenny Veach, by Indians in the past, anyone else in between, tribes, strangers, if it had like a message, a word on saying, help me, here I am, like a beacon, a marker, you never know. This appears to all be natural, but I do like to take my time just to make sure I've not missed anything. Don't see any skulls, bones. Don't see anything unusual hiding or lurking in the bushes, at least from here. Not from the looks of it. Okay. And then this one, looking down. Very interesting. The way it's shaped like was like a cube in a way. Now, if we have a look here, which is a bit better, appears to be a slight little hole there. Not too sure what caused that. Whether anything was wedged in there at some point, like a plank of wood. Some structuring support. Further down, almost a bit like an archaeological digging site in a way. You can see some things have fallen in. What I find rather interesting, I don't think there was any bones found, or at least when I was looking, I didn't see any bones, animal related. And the reason why I say it's kind of odd is when reflecting back on this area, you know, the width of it, how open it is compared to Kenny's mineshaft, a person could just fall in accidentally if they weren't looking where they were going, especially if it's dark. The same could happen with an animal, right? And it may not be able to get out. The fall may not be as bad. It might not kill you, but it could still incapacitate your legs depending on how you fall and land and the weight too, when the gravity's pulling you down. But I'm just surprised nothing's fallen in there, as in animals, bones, because Kenny's mineshaft, I believe there was the odd bone or so in there, and maybe more so in a different mineshaft elsewhere. I'm surprised this one hasn't, because of the width, how wide it is. But the base of it, and I would call it the base, is quite interesting. Now, SB did mention the possibilities that it could have been deeper at one point in the past. It might have collapsed in on itself and filled in, whether that's before or after Kenny. If Kenny had gone into that mine shaft, for what reason? Why? Considering he likes exploring caves, you'd think if Kenny Veach was to end his life, for example, he would choose a cave over a mine shaft. And yet, in his hike footage, he spent more care and attention to a mine shaft than he did in exploring a possible cave out there, shallow or not. So maybe Kenny had the same interest with this mine shaft too. Maybe it's a secret passion or something else hidden behind his motive out there. Yeah, he talks about a cave, he talks about nature and hiking, but exploring mine shafts and mines can be a hobby and activity too, and for some a job. I mean, you know, you look at exploring abandoned mines in unusual places. The name says it all. So there are people out there, creators and non-creators, that like exploring places like that. Maybe Kenny had a secret interest too, and it partially showed in his video and showed more when they found some of his possessions nearby. The question is, was it this one or was it the other main mineshaft? And considering this hasn't really been brought up much before, those possibilities at this moment in time are somewhat endless, and because search and rescue haven't given the reports details as to which specific mineshaft, it's open to interpretation, hence why what we're doing right now. Now, in terms of these pieces of wood, might have just seen one nail at least, there we go, which have fallen on in, slightly different coloured. There is something there, roots from vegetation. I don't know if that's a piece of metal, maybe mining, metal, equipment. No tools, no bottles, no beer bottles or anything like that. There was a lot of that was found in Kenny's mineshaft, and a barrel as well, which had a hole in, which some thought, well, did it have a bullet hole in, or was it caused by something else? The thing what I find pretty interesting about this area is the base, the ground level. It looks somewhat smooth with the, exception of the layer of loose gravel, which probably has come on in. Some material there of sort. No harm in looking up close slowly, just in case there was any bones, fragments, teeth. Could be anything, you never know. You can always pause the video if you want to, just in case you notice anything. Any fingertips, any bones, really anything whatsoever. I don't see much at this moment in time. Doesn't help is the colouring of it all looks somewhat the same. Probably a rock there, slightly different coloured. Bit yellowish, that. But have you seen, when you look down here on the side of the wall as it goes down, have you seen how smooth it is? That's really smooth and almost like up to a certain point, like a straight line compared to some of the other sides where it's a bit more rugged and rough. That is rather smooth and interesting. And how it connects to, I guess, the base of it as well. It looks almost flattened, like it's hit a hard level ground. The basement, if you're walking on a road or walking on a sidewalk, the ground level, it's just flat, it's hard, it's compacted. Is there anything below that underneath? Well, of course, if you started digging, you could uncover more, but has it already previously been uncovered and then filled back in? That's the question. And if it had been, was that before Kenny? More likely. See, the thing is, even if Kenny's not in this mine shaft, he could still have stood nearby it. And it's that question of what was going through his mind. What was he doing in that spot? Why did he not include it in his original M Cave hike video? Why did he not make a reference to it? But yeah, very interesting, how it's cut, how it's shaped. More prominent, this one, compared to Kenny's mineshaft, in how that visually looked. It looked a bit more messy, run down and worn. And then we've got this angle here. It's a little bit more clearer. And that one. And in terms of over there, which is a canyon itself, if you're wondering what that one is, that's more so east. Depending if you're going slightly diagonal, a bit northeast on Google Earth is at a slightly different angle. That's the canyon, which runs up that way, supposedly a dead end over there. I'll do a deeper analysis of that location some other time because interesting findings did come from up there. And so it's slightly unexpected, whether it directly links to Kenny or not, the presence of other people out there hunting, but was Kenny the hunted? We'll leave it there for now, but I will do a video about that, so keep an eye out. And then in terms of this location, just to reference it briefly, this is what SB had to say.
Usually when you find one thing, you find more. So we got the mine over there, prospect pit here, Kenny Veach mine up there, and on top of Wild Horse Pass is another prospect pit.
There's kind of a uniform order to it in how it follows, but when referencing back to inside of this second mine shaft, which, to be honest, it could be considered the first mine shaft before you get to Kenny's, but we call it the second one because it was found second, right? On this side, in the corners, it doesn't look as smooth as we saw on the other face wall area, but it does look like hard, the ground, if that makes sense. You sometimes when something's filled in, and it could be by loose gravel, it could be a bit, not always, a little bit squishy, depending. And if it did rain at some points and water got in, it could make the ground a bit saturated. But I don't know, it just looks quite hard, the ground, like they were digging so far down and then they decided to stop completely. But I'm no expert. Slightly clearer imagery here where it's not as blurred. You got these bigger chunks of rock which are just resting on top of, whether people call it a false floor or base ground solid level or filled in. Don't see any, you can't be looking for tunnel ways here because there's just no real opportunity. If it did go deeper down underground, there could be some connecting tunnels and networks. You never know about that. What's that? Is that probably nothing? I just saw it looked like a tail, like some kind of rat. Probably not. Any fragments of interest? Doesn't seem to be the case. Nothing unusual at this moment in time. But once again, if you notice anything, you can always leave your thoughts and comments down below. Different colouring of rock. Don't see anything shiny. I've not seen any crystals. And furthermore, I've not seen any crystal skulls down here. Because whilst Kenny's mineshaft may have had a crystal skull placed in and down there by someone. If that really was the case, I'm surprised no one tried putting a crystal skull down this mine shaft, whether it be deep down or more on the surface level round here near the rock. I'm just surprised no crystal skull was added here as like part of the mystery. If anyone was trying to create more out of nothing, you know, or if Kenny Veach did it himself, different possibilities. But it looks pretty normal to me, but the shaping of it is interesting, of course, visually speaking. And then from this angle as well, not too much wood that goes across it. It looks longer this way, the width of it. Plank wood, which is probably just resting on the side. It could have been an overall frame to it. I don't see any holes in the ground or any like metal poles as for foundations. It may have been just mainly out of wood and the rest just collapsed inwards. You have a little thing there's a little gap. Whether anything was hidden under there, you never know. A hidden secret note by Kenny Veach, a little crystal skull shoved under. You never know at this point. These small little nuts and crannies, small spaces. Not so much for Kenny getting into the small places, but if anything was like hidden there, it's always worth keeping a close eye out. And when referring back to the prospect pit down this way, there's like ground disturbance caused by humans with time, that if you're linking it to Kenny's disappearance, for example, depending on if there was a cause of death, if he is dead or was at the time, if Red Rock Search and Rescue were using drones back then, I don't think they would have had access to a full spectral drone with ground penetrating radar in the hands of military only back then. I know in 2022 onwards, the Dylan Rounds case, Heavy D acting as a pilot, and the victim's family got permission, handed over, gifted or donated a full spectral drone to search for Dylan Rounds, check for soil disturbance, ground disturbance of if the body was to be buried somewhere. It wasn't successful, which is quite shocking. Could a full spectral drone have been used in the Kenny Veach case and would have yielded any more results? And when coming across things like this, a prospect pit, would Kenny have ever considered going in one or trying to cover himself up? I just can't imagine it. I can't imagine the idea of Kenny going somewhere to end his life and also conceal himself. You'd have to end your life first and then be covered up after, but you can't do that yourself because you're already dead. If you cover yourself up first and you try ending your life, it's going to be a bit awkward and messy. Just like holes in the ground, shallow more so. Talk about graves and open graves, and with SB coming across potential graves or rocks cairns piled on top of one another, the odd metal rods stuck in the ground, whether that be honouring something or someone or just a marker and a beacon. There's interesting finds out there, Little Jermaine Canyon, but they don't all have answers. So sometimes it is a bit of a guessing game. And now SB did mention that there was some bigger boulders or rocks found in the middle when going up Little Jermaine Canyon, and they likely didn't come from mountains, or if they did, it wouldn't have reached the section which you came across them at. So how were they placed there, natural or not? And the mention of boulders and rocks being moved and adjusted, well, we've seen the possibilities of that elsewhere too. It's questions of what are people really doing out there. For Kenny, retracing the M Cave. For other people, you'd think looking for Kenny and M Cave. But not much going on here. Not from the looks of it, but still. Interesting to point out, first time I believe SB came across this. Hopefully you found this analysis video interesting and useful. Be sure to hit the like button, share the video to spread the awareness, and also, once again, credit to SB, Vegas Adventures. They were the one in their video that suggested, hey, well, like Ralph, maybe you should be analysing this, and here I am, now is the time. This, for now, visual, to look at it up close, to get an idea of what it looked like, the depth of it, and the likelihood of whether Kenny's in there or not. It's more likely, not that I'm saying he is in one in the first place, but it would be more likely, in my opinion, for Kenny to have gone down into the other mine shaft compared to this newish finding. But in terms of the phone and coins being dumped, placed, it could be one or the other. The articles, the news groups, the Commander David Cummings that came across it never specified which mine shaft, so it could be one or the other, maybe even another one out there somewhere else. As for the prospect mines, I don't think Kenny would take that into much interest or cover those areas, even the one near or on Wild Horse Pass. I think mine shafts and caves are what Kenny's focus was. And if the mine shafts are of a certain level of importance and interest to Kenny, for his hike footage, for his markers, his beacons, even on his final hike, what's within the mine shafts, or what was at some point, if it's been covered or filled since. Whether Kenny's in there or not, likely not. It's the external separate secrets, whether it's a tunnel ground network. And for some reason, I just feel that if there are tunnels which are in Kenny's mine shaft, they could lead down to the second mine shaft, these underground networks, and how far do they go on and spread out to? Does it go over to military land underground? Does it go towards the M cave? Does it go towards the hotspot area where there was missing time, lost footage, equipment malfunction, and all of that, and Kenny getting nervous and scared? There seems to be a lot of different possibilities, and if Kenny had chosen this secondary mine shaft to place his items there, what, to make it seem like he's in the shaft? No, but just to show he's out there, he's going in a certain direction. But if it is that spot and his scent ends at that spot, where does it disperse? Where does it go to? Simply doubling back to the way he came, or parting ways going elsewhere, more east or west? Because of where this secondary mine shaft is, it's more on the right hand side when going up north, and most hikers have gone on the left hand side. With SB recently doing what he did, he's discovered a bit more and uncovered some new things too, which he's been looking for some time. So just in general, that positive factor of there are still things being discovered out there, there is still chances and hopes of uncovering the truth of Kenny Veach, the M Cave, and any of the sub-mysteries in between, which are related or unrelated. There's a lot of things to consider. So join me next time as I do a location map analysis to go in a bit deeper and further, and just to make it a bit clearer as in the locations. I didn't want it to be too overwhelming in one big video because of the length. So join me next time as we go onwards with the theories and ideas and location. With that all being said, my name's Warlike Rare. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye. Good night for now.